Hello. Let's take this off really quick. This is another film analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just kidding. This is another film review by Caleb Cripps. This week I am talking about the Florida Project. Let me pull up my tabs. Florida Project. Get my notebook. Alright, so I've uploaded one video and it got 200 views. And I looked at the analytics and it seemed like people only stayed around for the first 10 minutes. So I'm going to cut the film review, like as in reading over the film, so that you guys stay and listen to that, or listen to what I have to say, instead of listening to me just reading the film. So I'm not going to be reading the film, I'm just going to go into it, kind of talk about what I like. I guess I'll just start off with that. When we talk about the film, sorry. So the Florida Project, released in 2017, is an American slice-of-life drama film directed by Sean Baker and written by Baker and Chris Burgock, whatever. Stars William Dafoe, Brooklyn Prince as Mooney, Bria Vinati, whatever, as Haley. Most of these people in the film, this is their debut film, which is kind of crazy. The plot follows a 6-year-old girl living with her delinquent single mother in a motel in Florida, as they try to stay out of trouble and make ends meet so they can keep ahead of their impending homelessness. The misery and squalor of their life in Kissimmee is contrasted with the nearby Walt Disney World, which can be seen in a distance in one shot. The Florida Project refers to the original name of the theme park. So these two, both young women, a mother named Haley and her daughter named Mooney, live in a hotel, and you follow their life as they attempt to dodge homelessness. And it's a great movie. We mainly follow Mooney and how she gets herself into certain situations, but we also see Haley and her as a mother and sort of how she acts, just the things she does. And I noticed that it's a slice of life and there's not really a certain direction to the story. You're just kind of following their life, but it seems to be the beginning of the end. That's where the story takes place. Like, she just started to rent down some abandoned houses. The abandoned, she burnt them down, and then her friend stops talking. Haley's neighbor, her best friend, stops talking to her and stops letting her son see Mooney. Then they get caught for selling perfume outside of the hotels in Walt Disney World. But in Walt Disney World, they'd sell perfume to these people walking by. And when they got caught doing that, they had no way of making money to pay rent. So she began prostituting again. And you're just seeing sort of the ending of it, eventually concluding with the split of Mooney and Haley. I think this type of film is great, the slice of life specifically, because if we talk about what I like, what makes a film great for me, it's something that reaches. Ultimately, there's almost like a trifecta. I usually talk about two because it's easier to keep it binary, either left or right, black or white. You know what I mean? It's easy to keep it that way. But for me, it's sort of a trifecta of things. It's making something personal and intimate as a letter, but also something that's mass appealing, but also takes advantage of the medium of film. Like, for example, the film ends with Jancy taking Mooney to Walt Disney World, and they just run in. Something like that couldn't be written in a book. If you were to write something like that in a book, it wouldn't make sense. They're like, okay, what? They just grab their hand, and what? That doesn't make sense. They would get what they're trying to allude to, um, but for the most part, sorry. If this story was written in a book, they would understand what the writer's attempting to allude to with the very last shot. But in a film, it really is able to capture that energy and present it all the way through. Like, you could do a slice of life book, and they've done slice of life books, but it seems like film takes advantage of it and is able to capture the energy, capture the emotion, and capture the milieu of the universe. And it's those three things with the mixture of audio and visuals that film transcends in acting and all the other things, but it transcends writing and theater. Um, so because of that, slice of life is way more entertaining, and you're able to just give off a lot more emotion. Especially like the relationship between Haley and Mooney. It's almost as if society says they shouldn't be together, but their dynamic works well. It's just the way that Haley goes upon securing finances isn't correct, but she's not a bad mother. Well, she's not a great mother, but she's not a bad one. And being able to capture that sort of duality, you could write that in a book. You can easily write a character whose depth has enough. You'd have to sort of build to it, though. You'd have to sort of build towards this character having these, being able to be a decent mother. Like, you can present that in many ways in a book, but a film, this a perfect way is that, like, one night I saw her like smoke a blunt next to her daughter, and the next morning they go out and play in the rain. So it's like, yeah, like, you could present that in a story, in a written story, or in a theater, but it seems like film captured that way more. You can capture it in a certain way that film or theater and literature can't. And that's sort of my big thing about this film, is that I'm going to say over and over and over again, but films that sort of inspire other directors to create films, or like films that, oh, I'm going to talk about William Dafoe too in a second, are films that I really like, because like Sean Baker, right before this, his only other film, or the film that he made right before this, was shot entirely on iPhones. And that gave him the prestige, the backing, the notoriety, whatever you want to call it, to be able to make this movie. With, by the way, the very ending is made shot on an iPhone, which they snuck into Walt Disney to do, or uh, Walt Disney World, whatever it's called, Disney World. Jesus Christ. I just really like that. It's something that aspiring filmmakers can look to. It's something that I can look to most definitely. I could easily write a slice of life story with inspiration from this movie, and it's definitely a genre that's not very common in American cinema, especially to make it in Netflix. Like, this isn't like A24 is the reason why these type of artsy films are becoming more mainstream and just getting more wider recognition. But you still have to be one of the most prestigious directors to get an A24 sponsorship. So that's a whole. What I'm saying is that you could make this film with enough money and enough vigor and enough willpower. I think that's something to take note for this film. I also wanted to note Brooklyn Prince's acting. This is her first role. And Bria Vinia IT, whatever, Haley, the mother. God, they're great. They're phenomenal. Brooklyn Prince. It's as if She has this almost innocence to her, but it's interesting because she's not dumb. She's talking about these locations like she's been there a trillion times. If you've ever had a friend visit your hometown, or you've made a new friend who's just moved in and you're giving them a tour of the city or something, this is, you know everything because you've been there forever and you've been around the block. And this little girl who's not even 10 years old has been around the block more than once. And she's giving a tour to Jancy, and she's not dumb. But it's interesting because the entire time her energy, her mannerisms were like screaming, yelling, happy, bouncy, never sad, and she was able to pull out the emotion at the very end for her age. I just think that's amazing, just how young she is, and to do that in front of the camera. Um, I just think that I was a little kid and I was very shy, and I wouldn't have been able to cry in front of the camera, and she did it very well. I really want to talk about William Dafoe, because my dude, William Dafoe, just kills it over and over and over. He does not. He just wants to freaking outshine everyone or something. I don't know. For the last like 5 years, he's been doing so many good things. He's done, what is it called? Fantastic Mr. Fox. Then he did Nymphomaniac, yeah, The Fault in Our Stars, The Grand Budapest Hotel, John Wick 1, okay, The Florida Project, At Eternity's Gate, which is a biopic of Vince Van Gogh, so he plays Van Gogh, Lighthouse, by the way, by Robert Eggers, which I'm going to review. It's an amazing film. Or I really like it. And I might do Witch too. And then he did The French Dispatch in 2020 with Wes Anderson. It's in post-production right now. But that's crazy. That is nuts. He's just killing it, and he's just doing so many great roles. Like, William Dafoe's a good actor, but I love actors who are just picky with their roles, and they'll just do something every year, but it's very specific, and it's not something just random that their agency is just sending them. And I think, yeah, especially because he's already established, he doesn't need money. That's a whole other thing. Just wanted to point out he did great in here. His relationship with Mooney and Haley was very interesting. It's very much like a father-daughter. And it's seen especially when this man comes in accusing Haley of stealing their bands. They're like wristbands for Disney World. And Haley and Mooney did steal it, and they sold it to a couple for super cheap. And he confronts her at her hotel room, and Bobby, whatever his name is, I'm pretty sure it's Bobby, played by William Dafoe, comes in and kicks that guy out, because he's like, "What are you doing here with 4 wristbands?" Alluding that he has like 4 prostitutes at the hotel, because it's a very poor hotel, but looks very pretty. It's called the Magic Castle. It's kind of crazy. But, so he kicks the guy out of the hotel, and he requires Haley to sign in basically anyone who comes into her hotel, because he's been prostituting, or she's been prostituting, while Mooney is in the room. She would lock her in the bathroom. And it's kind of interesting. And she gets very upset, runs into his office, and he like yells at her, saying, "You better leave, and you have until the count of 3. 1, 2, 3." And when he yells 3, she runs out the door. She reaches into her pants and pulls out a tampon, a bloody pad, not a tampon, it's a pad, and slaps it on the window, and you see there's blood on it. I think this is very interesting, because the relationship is like father-daughter, and a young girl who starts to go through those things tends to have mood swings, and the father would almost require her daughter to check in with him who comes into her room. and she's very hysterical because of the things she's going through, and she presents it to him in the most blatant manner. I just think it's very symbolic of their relationship, showing that their mother, she herself, and that's the interesting thing about her dynamic with Mooney, is that her with Mooney, it's definitely motherly in a sense, but it's more like two best friends. One's an adult who has to pay and deal with all the bills and things like that, and the other one's a child who just makes things happy and just keeps the vibe going. And it's interesting because it's not too motherly. It's definitely friendshipy. So there's like a father daughter dynamic and two friend dynamic. It's not like they're, yeah, she's not that mature. She definitely is a good person though. She's just not a good mother. That's it. And that's what ultimately the film concludes with, is the separation of these two people. And it's really interesting because a film like this, it's attempting to capture an energy, which it does. This girl, she lives in a poor area, and she sort of escapes it, and I can read it here. We've been watching Mooney use her imagination and wonderment throughout the entire film to make the best of the situation she's in. She can't go to Disney Animals Kingdom, so she goes to the safari, quote unquote, behind the motel and looks at cows. She goes to abandoned condos called the Bandits that she burnt down, because she can't go to the haunted mansion. And then in the end, with this inevitable drama, this is me saying to the audience, if you want a happy ending, you're gonna have to go to the headspace of this kid, because here's the only way to achieve it. And you could see that. You could see her taking advantage, or not taking advantage, being just on the ride of her life, living in this poor area. And she, like she said, she must psychologically block it out or something. Because that's how she copes with it. And she goes to these other areas that represent or are symbolic, similar to the tampon and the relationship with Bobby, or whatever his name is. The condos, the safari are symbolic of the actual Disneyland that they go to at the very end. So it's very trite with symbolism. And I was gonna mention Sean Baker's direction. I think there's certain subtleties to the film that anyone should know, should pay attention to. A lot of them you could see are taken in one shot and sort of edited on set, like as you go. It's kind of interesting. Sometimes there's just super long takes. And one of my favorite shots that I think anyone would notice is when Bobby is outside on the third floor. He's smoking a cigarette, and all the lights from the hotel turn on, and the camera simply just pushes in. I think that's you don't need very much to make a film cinematic to capture an energy. This man sits here every single night, looks at Disney from that spot, smokes a cigarette, and those lights turn on around him every night. And you know that from a single shot with a push in and a light on. And I think it's almost, it's a note to Sean Parker's attention to detail. That it's not the showy things, it's not the flashy things, it's not the colors, right? Mind you, the colors were amazing. It's not those what show his technique, show his skill. That's not what shows it. It's those little things. It's the way he directed all these these first time actors, William Dafoe being the only famous actor, he's able to, because you have to be able to articulate to an actor. I mentioned it before. A lot of things on set for a director are binary. I want a light behind him because I want it to be able to, I want a backlight, or I want a light below him so he looks scary. I want it there and on. Very binary. It's very simple. Input and output. Same with sort of costume. I want him to look like a teenage boy. You can make it very simple. This is sort of cybernetics. But most of these things are very simple. And the things that are very intricate are usually camera placement and camera cutting. And then actors. Actors are very intricate because they have independent computers. Usually you're inputting straight to the computer that has usually one output. A camera clicking record, a light turning on, things like that. A human is their own computer, and you send them an input. They have to be able to interpret that information and give you an output in the information through their computations, not yours. You merely just gave them the inputs on the keyboard or on the mouse. So being able to direct an actor is sort of like that. Being able to give them the right input so they can output the energy, the acting, the things that you're attempting to pull out of, not only pull out of them, but put into the story and capture. And he does it very well. Especially, my thing is that when you never had, they've never acted before, you have to, the way you kind of have to direct these actors, I think it's very, to an extent, it's very easy when you have, let me see the budget, when you have $2 million and say, hey, I need you to scream, like, I think that's kind of easy to do, but to have it all sync perfectly and not seem like, for example, my friend and I have just I rewatched Uncut Gems. Well, that was his first time watching Uncut Gems, and he didn't like it. He thought Adam Sandler's acting was terrible and that his crying was fake. It was just very hard to believe. This one, I think entirely you can believe all of it. And it's as if you're just sitting there and watching it from an iPhone. Because the cinematography isn't too intricate either. It really reminded me of Jackie's Tati or something like that. Playtime. I just watched it on Canopy. And wow, that movie is great. And it has so many moving parts and all these people who are doing things. Like, I think of when the power went out and everyone comes out of their rooms, like, individually. And they're all yelling at him and then they'll praise him. And the way just the camera followed William Dafoe is very simple. It was very coordinated. And it really just showed I'm just trying to talk about Sean Parker's control of the film. And how the little details I really enjoyed. That really made this film great. The very end of the movie, Mooney is about to be taken away from her mother, Haley, from DCF. And she's about to go to another family, so she runs to the next hotel and goes to Jancy's hotel and asks Jancy, this is the last time I'm going to see you. And Jancy takes her hand and she starts crying, and it's this beautiful shot of her crying. And Jancy takes her hand and they run to Disney World. And they run all the way into Disney World and they go to the castle. And it's not one shot, it's edited to seem like one shot, because it just cuts them running and running and running. That was actually filmed with an iPhone at the actual Disney World without their permission. And I think that's great. That's another thing that filmmakers should be doing. One, it gives the film history It's not just another film. It's like it tried. It broke barriers. It had to break a little bit of rules on the way, but it did it to tell a really good story. I believe, did it play at Cannes? Yeah, it played at 2017 Cannes Film Festival. It's won Golden Globes, Academy Awards. It's great. It started the freaking career of Brooklyn Prince. She just played in a film called Turning that came out this year. It's like, I don't even know where I was going with that. Sorry, I'm kind of high. But I think it's just a great movie, and it captures the energy very well. It not only, but it's not even capturing something. It's not documenting it. That's why I'm sort of describing it, but it's not documenting anything. It's presenting an idea, and his directing is so meticulous and with so much skill. I don't know how to other describe it than skill. That he can use simple things and make them extremely dense and very, 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 just very good. It's able to capture, it's able to create and capture an energy, a milieu, a slice of life. And not every director can do that. And it's just a great movie. Trying to think of any other things to say. And he also challenges everything. He challenges it. The attention to detail could be seen in everything, to the costume or lack of costumes because there's nudity, the color, the mise en scène, the actual directing, the camera angles, editing. Those things aren't usually talked about because people simply want a basic of cinematography, all in one umbrella, plot holes, and like story structure, and like that's it. I think there's a lot of other things to be taken into account. I think not all of them should be talked about all the time because they're not as important. Like for example, like yes, I get it. He has good cinematography. This film, The Florida Project, has great cinematography. But I'm trying to point it out because that's some of its strongest suits. Like if he that's like its strongest thing is all of it. It's like the crescendo of all of them coming together. Because I think a lot of films like a Marvel film, it's the story that sort of brings everything together. And you're like, okay, it looks exciting, but you're like, okay, but the story's great. This is like the story is great, the cinematography is great, the color's great, the costume's great, the acting's great, everything's great, the editing's great, the cinematography's great, the colors, everything you can name, the way it crescendos all together to like dun, and it works so well over and over and over. And it's as if it's a bunch of little short films too, which is really cool. All film, that's what people don't realize either, is a film is a feature film, a feature length film is the accumulation of short films. And it's sort of creating these multiple narratives within the slice of life that I really love that you can do with the medium of film that you can't do with any other narrative art form. And then again, that's another thing, is that film isn't a narrative art form. Ultimately, it's its own art form, and that's what this film is also achieving. There's a narrative to it, but there's no traditional narrative, or nothing that you could do in theater or literature. And this is what I mentioned before. And it's pushing the boundaries, not pushing the boundaries, but it's prodding the idea of what is a narrative, what is. You don't need to have a beginning, middle, and end. You could just show a story almost. And that's what film is able to do. And I think that's just more control. And especially I haven't talked about this, but the length of the film is extremely important. 111 minutes. That's an hour and 50 minutes, hour and 51 minutes. I think that's a great amount of time. The length is very important. 60, 120, yeah, an hour and 51 minutes. The length is very important because, especially at the speed at which the story is being told, it's very important. Like, I think of a ghost story. A ghost story spans time and space, literally. But it's only told in an hour and a half. I think even in an hour, like 15. I think that was perfect. You're not supposed to say anything bigger than what that story is. A ghost story is just a ghost story, and that's the ghost's story. Like, you don't need to have a 3 hour long movie because the movie takes time over years and years and years. Like, this movie takes place over maybe a week or two, maybe even 3 weeks, I don't know. And yeah, it's not exaggerated. It's perfect. It probably could be shortened just a little bit. Actually, no. I'm thinking if it was at hour 30, I wouldn't have enjoyed this movie. It would have been way too short, and I would have wanted more. And that's another thing with the time is there's a balance between giving them enough and giving them wanting or having them want more. The audience. Because you give them enough to answer all their questions, but give them enough to keep asking questions, if that makes sense. Like, there's sort of balance. If you just give them everything, it's like, I think if you give them everything, it's an American film. And you're like, okay, it's a happy ending, yeah. And you don't think anything's gonna happen after the story. If you give them a shitty one, where you don't give them any answers, they don't like that. I think of, like, Climax almost. You're just like, what the? There's no questions, there's no answers. Actually, there's sort of answers in Climax, but still. Let me check my time. God damn it, this is supposed to be a shorter time. Okay, we're gonna end it here. This episode we have talked about Sean Barker's 2017 slice of life drama film, A Florida Project. I didn't go over the story because I just want to talk about more of the things I liked about it so people could hear that. I think if I were to rate the film would be very high. I'd probably... I would give it... I can't. I'll give it an 8.5. I can't give it a 9. I want to give it a 9 because this is almost the third time I watched it. And it has replay value. It's kind of crazy. It doesn't lose its energy. It's very potent. And that's very hard. I think of, for some reason I think of Dead Poet Society. Dead Poet Society for me stays very potent. And no matter how many times I watch it, it's very strong. Another movie is... what is another movie? Oh, Hitchcock's... Vertigo. Hitchcock's Vertigo and Hitchcock's Rear Window. God damn, yeah, those keep their energy so much. And I can watch them over and over and over. This keeps its energy. And that's why I really want to give it a 9. But it's like, I can give 8s out like candy. I don't give a fuck about an 8. But to give a 9, you had to be very... This had the detail that I wanted to give for it to be a 9. But It's not. There's something missing. There's something about it missing. Maybe it's the ending. Maybe that the symbology, because them going to the safari and them going to the abandons were symbolic of Disney World, but that's not known until after, and I don't like that. I like to be. I want this. I want to be the idea of the symbol to be planted in my head, and then later on it's rewarded, but strictly through visuals. And that doesn't happen enough. It's not that it doesn't happen enough, it's that it didn't happen in this film. And I like when that happens because I like to have that reward. And I just like the control. It's almost like the director's whispering in your ear if you're paying attention. He's like, if you're paying attention to this edit, I'm telling you the answer. So you know compared to the other people. A perfect example of this is if you watch, I think it's I'm Just a Girl by Blondie or something like that. There's a music video. Oh, it's by Madonna. It's a song by Madonna in which it's a black and white, and she's between two relationships. And one's in like this fictional room with black and white checkered floor, and another one's on the street. And we were watching it in our class, and they said, talk about what happened in the music video. And I just started going over everything. I'm like, oh, she has relationship issues, and this is happening, and this one makes her happy, but this one is like whatever. And I was just kind of breaking down all the visuals because I could listen to the song, but I was paying attention to the story. And my partner didn't have a clue. I remember he's like, you saw all, I think it was a girl, she's like, you saw all of that? I'm like, yeah, you didn't? And we only watched like a minute and 30 seconds of the video. But it's sort of those details of the director speaking straight to the visual learners. Like, let me tell you the story, let me tell you little secrets. It's almost like a narrative voice, but through editing. And I like that. I think that In the Mood for Love had that. But that's why I gave it an 8. Like, it's good, but I can't. It doesn't have the replay value. At least I haven't watched it twice. But I don't see the replay value in it. Where was I going with this? Oh, yes, 8.5. I can't give it a 9. That's it, boys. We're signing off. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. If I rated this dumb and I rambled on, and I should probably talk quicker so you guys can hear more in the beginning, I can actually just lay it out because I just kind of rant and talk about my feelings about it when I can actually just write it down and make something more structured. I don't know. I'm just kind of keeping it freeform so it's not too serious. I just want to rant, just talk about the film. I notice when I smoke a little too much, I kind of rant a little too much, so I'll just try stop doing that and keep it more about the film. Thank you guys so much for watching. The next episode, I'm uploading her right now. Let's talk about the Florida project and then the lobster. The lobsters, that has a replay. That's a really good film. It's probably going to be rated a 9. Calling it now. Anyways, go watch Florida Project, Sean Baker. Comment what you think. Tell me if you agree. Tell me the things you do agree with, and tell me the things I said dumb, and tell me the things I need to do better, because I want you guys to watch these, and I want people to talk. Alright? See you.